Guys, welcome back to the Modern Craftsman, and today we have Jason Hibbs on the podcast, aka Bourbon Moth. Full disclosure, I had never known his first name because I've always known him as Bourbon Moth, and never dug into it. But I found this dude. I guess it was at the beginning of COVID, which we find out in this, and this dude turns a lawnmower into his a tank. And post this video on YouTube, and then I go in this deep dive on what he's got going on, and basically, his passion for woodworking, how he turned, a career later in life, but a career of fine woodworking and fine furniture building direct to client, and how he's kind of shaped that around a life that is centered around family and spending time with his family by utilizing things like YouTube and sharing what he's creating on a daily basis with more than just that end user.
Yeah, it was interesting because I did some background investigation on him, and I found out a fair amount of info, but I hadn't connected the dots with him being the tank guy until that, and also that
The tank guy.
what's his name? Kevin? No, not Kevin. Um, I can only think of his Instagram, but our previous guest that had been on, um, that knew him and spoke
Keith.
to us, Keith, about him during the podcast, and he was telling us about Jason, and I didn't make that correlation or connect the dots. So, like, we're in the middle of talking to him, and I recalled having this conversation about him with Kevin during his podcast, probably a year or two ago. So it was a good conversation. I like what he's doing. I like where his priorities are. We had a nice conversation about the adoption of his son and kind of what that looks like, because I don't know, I was just interested about it, and I've never had an opportunity to ask somebody about that, and he was willing to talk about it some. So hats off to him for that and his wife, and it's something that's very admirable that they've done, and I'd like to actually learn more about, because I just find it so fascinating. So I had a good conversation. A lot of light bulbs went off, and I think there's a lot to be learned from what he's doing.
This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. Andersen launched a contemporary panel option for both the gliding and hinged A-series patio door. This is the best performing, most energy efficient patio door, and it's now available with a thinner bottom rail and contemporary stop and grill profiles. And on the gliding door, an option for flush mount hardware.
I I actually am very interested and intrigued by that thinner bottom rail. I think that everyone wants more glass these days, and that's going to look pretty sharp. This is just the latest addition to their selection of contemporary windows and doors. Last year, they also launched the 400 series with a contemporary profile as well, putting a sleek new look on the window that contractors trust the most.
I would agree, Tyler. I think that's one of the most common things that we get is how do we make these profiles thinner? So kudos to Andersen for putting that together. If you guys want more information, visit the link in the podcast description for product info, to request a quote, or to design a window.
And just a reminder, that is andersenwindows.com, ANDERSEN windows.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Buildertrend. Change? Is it a good thing or is it bad?
Whatever the answer is for you, change is almost always a hard thing, especially when it comes to introducing new processes or modernizing your existing construction business.
To be clear, we're team change is good, and so are the folks at Buildertrend.
This is construction management for your whole business, a platform to align your team, drive growth, and impress clients.
So put down the pen and paper and never worry about fat thumbing another spreadsheet again. Buildertrend's platform gives you the tools to work simpler and run your business without letting it run you.
Who's saying that I have a fat thumb?
Buildertrend.
I actually think I do have a fat thumb, but I didn't feel that they would call me out on it. Well, that aside, here's the best news. Remembering what we said about change being hard? Nope, not here. Buildertrend's award-winning customer support and training makes it easy to get started. Ready to say goodbye to constant chaos? Check out buildertrend.com/MC.
Guys, we're live on YouTube. If you guys aren't paying attention to our YouTube, every Tuesday we go live and record the episode right from there. So if you want to join us on YouTube, make sure you head over to our channel. You can comment, be part of the show. Otherwise, you are listening to this on your podcast app of choice. This week we have Jason Hibbs, aka the Bourbon Moth, Woodworking. Dude, you got some stuff going on. How are you?
I'm good, man. Grinding away. How are you guys?
We're good. I feel like we have different grinds here. Like you do some funny, cool ass stuff.
Oh,
Like you got
thanks, man.
I mean, just the projects are always so interesting.
What you're in Oregon, right?
Yep, I am in the Willamette Valley, which no one pronounces right. Everyone says Willamette, but it's Willamette. Just
And
south of Portland, Oregon.
and you were essentially born and raised there. I saw you were born in Bend.
Yeah, I was born in Bend, which is the hot spot in Oregon right now. Everybody from California is
Yeah.
moving up to Bend. It's the place to be.
Mhm.
I
I
was born
wanted your
there.
thoughts on Bend.
I was born in Bend before it was cool. All right.
Yeah.
And
So
then
when did it turn cool?
Man, probably it seems like the last like 5, 10 years or so. I don't know honestly what made it cool. I have a theory that there's one brewery over there, 10 Barrel Brewing, which became very popular and eventually got purchased by Budweiser, and Budweiser kind of
Oh,
blew them
okay.
up. And then I think a bunch of other microbreweries were like, "Oh, this happened to them. Maybe it'll happen to me." So it kind of became like the microbrewing hub. And so I mean, you throw a rock any direction in Bend and you're going to hit a microbrewery. But I feel like that kind of started this like brewery culture, kind of like outdoors culture, and just kind of
Yeah.
became a cool vibe. So a lot of people
It's a
started
cool
moving there.
town.
Yeah.
I was there I guess 11 or 12 years ago. My wife and I, after we got married, flew into San Francisco and then road tripped up the West Coast. And I don't know why she had us stop in Bend, but I mean, maybe if you're born and raised there, it doesn't seem so special. But when we were there, it like being in Bend and the surrounding area was definitely we could live here.
Yeah.
And that was, 12
That's the
years
problem.
ago.
Everybody goes to Bend and they're like, I could live here. And you're like, well, yeah, now it's overcrowded because everyone's living there.
Yeah. I mean, even like within the city limits of Bend and all the tiny little craftsman bungalows and like the nice town, I think we probably had lunch at a brewery we stayed in, a McMenamin's that was down there.
Mm-hmm.
Had a bunch of good coffee and it was dope.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I feel like it's one of those places that if you're from there and everyone wants to move there, you're like, fuck Bend.
Oh, I know. You talk to any local in Bend and they like hate it because
Yeah.
they've lived there for 20 years and now it's overcrowded. But if you're in California where real estate's, $1 million for a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, and Bend's got a cool vibe and you can get something for way cheaper, I get it.
Yeah.
I
And I
get
mean,
the
there's
appeal.
decent school systems, right?
Yeah, decent school system. It's Oregon, but it's not Oregon in the way that like everyone thinks Oregon is the rainy, state in the country and it's always raining.
Yeah.
And Bend is in Oregon, but it doesn't rain very much. It's high desert, so it's pretty dry. You get
'Cause
snow in the
it's
winter. You're
east of the
close to the
mountains?
it's both east and west of the mountains. So it's east of the Cascade Range,
Yeah.
where there's good skiing up in the Cascade Range and snowboarding, and then it's kind of northwest of Mount Bachelor, which you can pretty much ski all year round, I think, there. So yeah, and then you got, fishing and rafting and mountain biking. I mean, it's a cool place, definitely. My sister lives over there, so we go over there a lot.
How far are you guys from there?
Well, it's like 2.5 hours. But that's the other funny thing about Bend is it's out of the way. If you're just driving through Oregon, I mean, you really have to want to go there. It's not on the
I
way
guess my
to
wife
anything.
wanted to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
there. I was along for the ride. She like loves doing that crap. And I was just driving and we went there. I mean, we made a few stops in Oregon, one of which was Portland, which I didn't love.
Yeah, most people say that.
I don't know because I feel like Portland's like the hot spot and everyone loves Portland and it was a weird, I guess, coming from East Coast cities, it was a weird city. Like all the neighborhoods were really spread apart, so it wasn't as if you could walk or like bike easily to one another.
Hmm.
And it seemed like it was like populated and then desolate and then populated. I don't know. I didn't love Portland. I hope that's
Yeah.
a knock or an insult.
No, I totally get it. I try and spend as little time in Portland as humanly possible. It has gone, I mean, it's gone downhill in the last few years.
It's
We're
expensive too.
we're a very friendly city, which I appreciate. We're very, very nice to the homeless community, which I think is important, but there's no plan in place there. And so
Yeah.
you go up there and there's just tents and, homeless encampments everywhere, and they've kind of taken over the entire city.
Mm.
Which those people need a place, sure, but without any plan or organization, it's just kind of the whole downtown is there's just trash and garbage and
It's like San
everything.
Francisco.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
So what is the kind of demographic and market and landscape of where you are in Oregon?
So I'm about an hour south of Portland, and we're pretty much kind of in rural farmland. So we're not in a city. We're outside of the closest city to us would be Albany, which is a pretty small town. It's only like 50,000 people, maybe. But we're outside of that a little bit. So we're surrounded by mint farms and dairy farms and that sort of thing.
And not too far from the coast.
No, it's nice. I mean, where we live, we're about 60 minutes from good skiing in the Cascade Range. We're about 60 minutes from the coast if you want to go surfing or hiking over there. So I like it. We're not too far from I-5, so we can hop on there and go up to Portland or head down to California.
And you grew up close to there or not really close to there in Oregon?
Not really. So I grew up, I actually grew up in Washington, but right across the border from Oregon in the Columbia Gorge. And then when I was in 5th or 6th grade, my family moved to Arizona. And so I was in Arizona until my junior year in high school, got kicked out of high school, and decided to finish my high school diploma in Oregon because kind of felt like home because I grew up there, moved back to Oregon, haven't left since.
That's sick. I wish I got kicked out of high school and just never went back.
Never went back. Yeah. Kind of
I
what
feel like if I would have got kicked out of I would have been like, all right, this is a good opportunity to just not. I remember reading, and maybe it was a myth, but being 16 that you could legally drop out of high school and not be required to go back. And I don't know if I just made that up or maybe I heard some cool band did it, and I like had this delusion that I was going to stop going to school when I was 16 and just like that was going to be my life. Didn't happen.
Yeah.
But so what were you doing prior to woodworking? I saw that your wife has a business, a textile business, and you were helping her out, but then you were in nursing school before that?
Yeah. So I moved back up to Oregon from Arizona. I started working at a summer camp as a camp counselor. Classic story. Met another camp counselor who ended up being my wife, fell in love, over the summer. And then she lived in the town that we kind of live in now. So I ended up moving from where I was in Oregon to be closer to her when we were dating. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I started going to a community college here in town. And I bounced around from everything. I mean, like I was an education major at one point, physical therapy and psychology and English major. And eventually, for some reason, I settled on nursing. And so I was in nursing school. Me and my wife had gotten married at this point. We started managing a storage facility in town, which actually was a pretty sweet job for being in school because they pay for your rent. You live on site at the storage facility. You don't really have to do anything except
Really?
like check people in. Yeah, it's a good gig. So we had like no living expenses. We had this little apartment at the storage facility. We got to deal with all the weirdos, trying to store their used mattresses or whatever. But my wife had been in art school up in Portland. That's what she went to school for. And so while we were at the storage facility, we started playing around with printmaking. We started doing hand-carved block prints, and then eventually that kind of transitioned into screen printing, and we started a textile printing company, which is just kind of fancy vernacular for we'd print our own hand-drawn images onto various household items like tea towels and napkins and tote bags and that sort of thing. And
Were
so
you doing that yourself or like the actual printing? Or
yeah,
were you sending that?
no, it was just me and her. So we'd draw images. We'd both do the art. We'd draw an image onto a piece of paper. We'd transfer that onto a rubber block, and then we'd hand carve out the image from the rubber block. And then we'd put ink on it and stamp it to whatever fabric we were printing on. And I really liked that part of it. I've always been somewhat artistic, and the hand carving was really fun. And we just kind of started doing it as a hobby, and then that developed into a business. So we quit the storage facility. Actually ended up dropping out of nursing school to focus on that business full time. Did that for a few years, and then we eventually moved out of the storage facility. We bought a house with a little shop attached to it, turned that into our printing studio. And then one year we had a pretty good year income wise. And our accountant at the time was like, hey, you guys should probably figure out some tax deductions, or you're going to pay a lot in taxes. And so I don't know if it was legal or not, but I bought a bunch of woodworking equipment through the business, mainly for
Yeah,
myself.
but you were using it. You were using it to cut the wood carvings.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
not at this point. It was all rubber. But I in the
Come
back
on,
of
I'm
my...
trying to help you out. I'm trying to help you out.
In the back of my mind, I was like, oh, maybe we'll do some wood stuff, eventually.
Yeah.
So I
We
bought a
were
bunch of...
storing our rubber
Exactly.
in wood shelves
I mean,
that we needed
I
built.
do think I built some like organization stuff for the studio, so you could go that route if you
Done.
wanted to.
Done.
Yeah.
Solid.
But yeah, I just started playing around with woodworking kind of on the side, and then that just kind of snowballed into its own little thing.
What year were you guys doing? Did like her business kind of establish itself?
We started that in 2010, I think.
Okay.
So
And you started woodworking in 2014, right?
yeah, sure, that sounds right. I know it
Based
was.
on
I
based on
know
your
how old
website.
my business was because I basically started my woodworking business like 3 months before my son was born. And he was
Mm.
born in March of 2015. So yeah, probably end of
The end of
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's ballsy though, to have one family. You're dropping out of school at this point, kind of chasing that path, and then starting your own thing. As see, like my wife works professionally. She has a very corporate job, and I feel like that's the hang up, the job security.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, could you imagine her going and just starting her own thing and being uncertain of what was going to happen? I would be like, no, I kind of like you being in corporate America and having a steady
Yeah.
job and health
Steady income.
insurance.
Yeah, I've never, other than when I was in high school and college, I've never like worked for anybody. I've always owned my own business or ran my own business. So it's got its, ups and downs. You definitely, I mean, it can be stressful at times because, yeah, if you don't bring in enough money, I mean, no one's bailing you out or anything. But it's
Yeah.
also got its perks where you can kind of do whatever you want. So that's nice.
So I know that you said you weren't quite sure where nursing school came from, but it seems like a far departure from what you were doing and kind of what your wife is doing as well. How did you end up, like, what was the thought process behind like, I'm going to go into a nursing program?
I think I liked the idea. I mean, I've always been like a very personable person. I like, interacting with other people. I've never been, put off by medical stuff. That doesn't like gross me out or anything. The community college I was going to had a really good nursing program.
Yeah.
Like people would come all from all over the state to kind of go to this nursing program because they were kind of known for it. So I think that was part of it, is going to school there. They really kind of advertised that. But I also liked the idea of like nurses work 3 on, 4 off. So you work
Mm.
3 12-hour shifts. Yeah, that's a lot of work, but then you get 4 days in a row off. And so in my
Yeah.
mind, I was like, yeah, you got to work 3 12-hour shifts, but you got 4 full days. You can do whatever the heck you want. You get paid, a decent salary. So
That's pre-kids thinking though, because
exactly.
like, my brother is married to a nurse, and he was always like, yeah, her schedule's so sick. It's like you said, you have a few days or you work 12s and then you have a bunch of time off. And they have a kid now, and it just completely screws and
Oh yeah.
upends their schedule. And I was like, you thought that was such a great schedule, and like once you add kids to the mix, or kid, it is not that great.
No. And I realized I probably wasn't cut out for a nurse when I started doing my nursing residency. and they had me at a local, it was like a retirement facility, but slash like hospice facility.
Mm.
And I was working night shifts there one week, and I show up for work, and the on-call nurse is like, "Hey, we need you to go do post-mortem care on one of the patients that just died." Which basically means you go in and you kind of like clean up their whole body, and you get them ready for the family to come in and, like, say goodbye to the person. And they had assumed I had done this before, which I'd never done it before. And so they sent me off by myself to do this. And I remember the hospice room where this woman had died had this long hallway. And whoever designed the hospice room like this was just sick, because there's a long hallway and the light switch was like down the hallway. So you had to walk down the dark hallway before you could even turn the light in the room off, or turn the light in the room on. And so I remember like walking in there knowing that there was a dead body in this room that I had to go clean up, and I couldn't turn the light on until I got like well into the room. And I turned on the light, and this lady was like, it's not what you see in the movies where they're peacefully lying in the bed. She was like half hanging off the bed. I mean, the
Oh
like
my
sheets were all off, her hair was all over the place, her eyes were open, she was staring at me. And I had to like get her back into bed. I'm in there all by myself. And then that night, I like got off work, I went home, and I still remember this so vividly. I went to bed that night, and I had one of those dreams that was so real that you swear like it wasn't a dream. But I remember I heard something in our living room, and our living room was right outside of our bedroom door. I heard something in our living room. I sat up in bed, and I saw this lady like walk in front of the doorway in our living room, and she stared at me while she walked in front of the doorway. And then I actually woke up, but it was the scariest fucking thing I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I would it stop my nursing program at that
Yeah.
point as
And
well.
then I was
Nick had one
like,
of those. Go ahead.
oh,
Nick had one of those dreams about us recording a podcast with somebody in a bathroom once.
I was like, where are you going with this? I mean, I feel like I have so many questions. The hallway thing though, like that had to be a setup, right? Like they were watching you walk down this hallway.
I don't know. I just don't think they thought through when they were building the building. And that was the other thing that really hit me, is like, especially when I was working at the retirement facilities, I would go in every day and I would make friends with all these like sweet old people, and we'd like get to know each other, and I'd look forward to seeing them every day, and felt like they'd look forward to seeing me every day. And then, one day I'd come in and be like, "Oh, where's so and so? Oh, they died last night." And it just killed me every single
Yeah.
time. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't want to do this.
So even before that, like, why did you go back to college? Like, what? We talk about nursing, but why did you even go back to school at that point?
um, because I mean, society tells you that's what you got to do, right? I
Because you
think
didn't
it's
know what you were gonna
changing a lot now, which is really
do.
good. And I'd love to talk about that, how college is, not for everybody. But at the time, I mean, if you wanted to be successful, you were told you had to have a college degree. And
Mhm.
so after finishing high school, I thought like, well, that's what I'm told I have to do. I have to do it, which was a mistake looking back now, because I
Yeah.
spent so much time bouncing around having no clue what I wanted to do. And
You
now,
waste so much time.
yeah, time, money, I'm not using anything I learned in college at this point. So
Yeah. What what
How
what are
old?
your
How
thoughts?
old are you? How old are you now?
35.
All right, so you're roughly our age. I feel like typical of our age and kind of our generation, where you got done high school and it was just expected of you to go get a college degree.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't even matter what it is, just get that piece of paper
Right.
Yeah, for
if
sure.
that's what you need.
Jason, what are your thoughts on college now?
Oh,
And
I
like what like
mean, I think college needs to be completely rethought and redone. I mean, if you want to get like really into it, I think the whole system is very, very broken. I think it makes total sense if you want to become something like a doctor or a lawyer, where you really have to study like, the law, and you need to know everything so you can defend a client, or you need to study medical stuff so that you can obviously perform surgery. But I think we need to go back to more of an apprentice-based system, to be honest. I mean, most jobs, I would say 95% of jobs out there, you could learn just by apprenticing under somebody who's already doing it and learn it much better than trying to be taught by some professor in a school.
And
And
Yeah, I
thinking
mean,
like you basically dump the resources that they're putting into these colleges by supplementing maybe income for, say, they supplement, the cost it is the cost to me for an apprentice, right? Rather than me
mhm.
putting them on payroll, use the resources that we would otherwise be putting into these schools to put them through an apprenticeship program.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think of like any job, like, I mean, a lot of the trades for sure, but even like people that are running wineries or, working in business at these, stock trade marketplaces. If you just
Mm,
hired somebody as an apprentice, you're going to learn that business under somebody else so much better than sitting in a classroom writing papers on it, researching it.
right.
Hands-on learning, I think, is the best way to learn. Now, obviously, you
I
don't want to go into a hospital and get have open heart surgery and have the person there performing the surgery be an apprentice. You want them to have practiced and done that. I still think there is a place for college in some regards, but
Let me challenge that. Like, why does it have to be in a college setting for that person to do open heart surgery?
no, I mean, I suppose it doesn't. You could have some sort of apprenticeship with medical stuff, I
I
guess. But I
mean,
mean,
I the
if you
point
look
is
at medical stuff, they're already doing an apprenticeship. It's called residency, you
mhm.
know? I mean, that's the majority of their medical training is after they've already completed their schooling, they go to residency and they have hands-on, like, one-on-one training. So they're already
But
doing that.
in theory, the stuff that they're learning in school, like, I've never been to nursing school, but, like, in theory, they don't have to go to a university to learn that. They just need to learn it,
Mhm.
w-
right? Like, that's in some way, they need to be educated on this prior to, having residency.
Yeah.
They need, like, the book smart, we'll call it. And right now it's done through through a university, but in the future it might be an e-learning class. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
probably I'm probably stretching that, but point being is, like, we're kind of lumping all education for everything into what we're calling college now, or what we've always called college. And that's where you basically get your fine-tuned learning in order for you to then go make a career out of it.
I also think that at that point, when you're getting to the point where you want to become a doctor or an attorney or a scientist, you've done the undergrad and you actually want to be there.
Mhm.
It's like I feel as though maybe years ago the undergrad program was, hey, not everyone goes to college. The people who are in college want to be here and they want a job that demands this kind of barrier to entry. And now undergrad is basically everyone wants to be there because it's a party for 4 years. It doesn't qualify you to do anything different than anyone else. And it's the people who are going to the post grad or putting 8 additional years of schooling into becoming a doctor, where it's like they're not looking for a free pass. It's not time off. It's not delaying life, but they're there because they want to be there, and
Mhm.
this is the direct path to where they want to be. And I fully endorse and support that. It's the undergrad and the business revolving around the entire like undergrad culture, and that you need to go to college and you need that 4 year education, where I look at everyone I went to college with and I wouldn't hire
Any of
75%
them,
of
yeah.
them. Like, I
Well,
don't even talk to any of them.
yeah. Well, and if you look at colleges, the number one degree given out by far, I mean, the number is staggering, is a master's in business.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to go to college for business. And I guarantee you ask any person that graduated with a master's in business who's employed now by any, wide spectrum of jobs that you can get with a business degree, and you say, hey, how helpful was your business degree in what you're doing now? They're probably gonna say, "Not really. I learned, everything I need to know for my specific job when I got hired
Right.
from my specific job." And that's where you have to stop and be like, "So why the heck are we making people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a degree if when they get hired, they're not even using it?" It doesn't make any sense.
Do
And
you
for me, and I've alluded to this before, and I think for a lot of people, it's because they wouldn't have the opportunity to get the job without that degree.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they're saying is like, well, the job I applied for is only hiring people that have a master's degree. So obviously I needed one. And that's where I think we need to redesign and change the narrative on the whole job hiring aspect.
So if you did something different than what you do for a living, um, do you think that you would be more apt to hire somebody if they had a master's degree in business versus a 4-year undergrad degree in business? Like just on paper?
I think I'm biased to that now because I'm so like, I mean, I've started my career and I've had multiple businesses now without any college degree.
Yeah.
So I'm biased to that because I'm like, you don't need a college degree. Just give
Yeah.
me a good person who's willing to work and I can train you to do what I want you to do. So it's hard for me to answer that. Having not started my own businesses, I might be like, yeah, obviously I want the person who worked the hardest and had the best degree, but
I think that's the only takeaway I have from that, that like undergrad is almost it's nothing to, it doesn't mean anything to me. The only thing, and it's kind of playing to the numbers, but if somebody did go through the extra work to get a master's in something that wasn't necessarily required, I like, in my head I think that maybe they put in more work or worked harder or made something happen um to have that opportunity, and
mhm.
that's like the only differentiator there for me between the two, and it's not a surefire bet that that person's more qualified.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree that college is a good way to weed out the people that are willing to work and the people that aren't willing to work. Because obviously, to get a master's degree, you have to put some work in. And I feel like companies look at that like, okay, you got a
Yeah,
master's degree. You're responsible enough to make it through 6 years of college or whatever it takes. But that's a pretty expensive requirement for people to get a job that they're not even potentially going to use all 6 years of for the job they're getting hired for, you know?
I also just don't feel that the undergraduate degree does anything for
No.
me as far as like per myself personally, but also to be an indication of what type of human being that is. It doesn't qualify anyone to, everyone can go to college if they want to.
Mhm.
It most of the people that I know went to college, they're not these amazing human beings. They weren't driven, they weren't staying home and studying and looking to be banner human beings. And to me, it's, I'd rather hire somebody with no college experience that I could mold, like, versus somebody who went to a 4-year because their parents had money to put them through college.
Yeah.
That doesn't prove to me anything.
No, and college is such a like, when you look at the history of the world, college is a very new invention. When you go back to, like, even the 1800s, and you would go from, like, grade school, if you went to grade school, that's a big if, to an apprenticeship. And your parents or you would line up an apprenticeship with somebody in a career, and you would go work under them, and usually you wouldn't get paid, but you'd be given, like, room and board, and you'd learn the skill, and then you'd go off on your own and start your own, like, job. And it would give them free labor, you would learn a skill, and then, it benefited everybody. I don't know at what point it'd be interesting to go back and study, like, at what point college became, like, this big have to thing. I think it was probably after World War II when America was really, like, growing and success was very important to Americans, and it was like, this is the mark of success. If we can afford to send our kids to college and we can afford to go to college, like, we're successful. But I think we just did it in the name of success and forgot, like, is this really that important? I don't know.
The
It's funny.
problem.
I'm just gonna chime in there for a second. I looked it up. Between the wars, 1920 to 1944 is when college attendance increased
Yeah,
fivefold.
there you go.
Probably to get out of going to war, to be
Um,
honest. I mean, the other, like, the other issue that we have right now, where college is so deeply intertwined, ingrained within our culture, that it starts at the elementary level, right?
Mm,
Where the people, like, your town, your house is more valuable in a town where kids do well with test taking and place kids in a better college with higher GPAs. So like
mhm.
the way that we teach our kids is to be good test takers so that they can get into good schools, so that our housing values go up, so that towns can collect more money on taxes, the federal government can make more money. And but I mean, that's why education has kind of become the monster that it has,
Yeah,
and
no,
the
I mean, I
teaching
would
career
definitely
isn't.
say, like, it's more business now than anything else. I don't think it
Absolutely.
necessarily has the best interest of the students or pupils in mind. It has the interest of, like, making money in mind.
Yeah, and it just it doesn't it's funny because I think that, our parents' generation it probably started at that high school level and then started moving towards college. And I think that now, like, the decisions for college and who's going to go to college, it's already starting at elementary school and creating a town and a culture based around that. And it funds everything within your town and how much your house is worth and how much taxes they collect. That it's like, how the hell do you even get away from that?
Mm. Well, I mean, I think the main way to get away from it, and the thing that more people need to realize is you might have a, doctorate to become a surgeon, or you might have to, pass the bar exam to become a lawyer. Do you know what has 0 requirements at all? Is starting your own business.
Yeah.
None. There's 0 requirements. Anybody can start their own business, and nobody is gonna be like, "Are you smart enough to do it?" No one's asking those
Mm.
questions. You just
But
go.
also nobody's teaching those lessons, right? In school, like, why aren't they teaching that shit where you can like, maybe it's to hinder people from having that knowledge, but if so many people are going to become entrepreneurs and so many people, everyone's going to have to pay taxes, why aren't they teaching us that crap in school than everything that we learned for 15 years of schooling? It's insane.
Mm, yeah. No, it's a really good point.
Everything that actually is important and applicable in life right now, most of that I did not learn from school. And I think even a lot of um, the work ethic that was instilled in me was not instilled in me by professors or teachers. It just wasn't.
It,
No.
it, it's an interesting conversation because if you think about like the workforce, most people are employees, and there's a lot of relationship back to school and an employee, where the employers are typically the ones that don't fit into school, that are that aren't don't want the structure of this is where I need to be when I need to be, this is what I need to learn, this is what I need to do, this is the time I need to do it. Where as a business owner, it's like we set that schedule.
Yeah.
It's like if I want to go learn something, I'm going to go learn it on my own terms, not sit in a classroom and be told this is how to do it, when to do it, how and where to do it.
Mhm.
Where I think, there's a lot of grooming in school where it's very much designed for the employee, where it's like, hey, here's the structure. This is when you show up. This is how you're graded. You're gonna be rated in the system based on that. It's the same as work. It's like, hey, this is when you show up. This is how much we're gonna pay you based on what your value is right now. This is how you grow, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the conversation around school and college oftentimes is directly related to like the entrepreneur or the employer mindset,
Yeah.
where there you, you know I bring that up because it's a lot of people don't want to be an employer, and a lot of people want to be an employee, and
Mhm.
just and want to and I don't want to say just work, but yeah, just work, like just show up and get a job
No,
done.
I get it. I mean,
And
there's lots of times throughout the week where I'm like, "Man, I wonder what it's like to have, like, a 9 to 5 job where I clock in, I work, I clock out, and then I don't think about work when I go home." That sounds pretty good. I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
Sounds
for like
pretty
a week,
nice. I've
and then I'd be going insane.
I've never had that though, like, and I feel like if you are hired by a big company, you're not giving your best to that company.
No.
You're working for the weekend, you're working to get your job done, and then you're looking forward to all those little breaks and vacations you can take. When you own your own business, something special happens, I think, where you give your absolute best all the time. Because if you don't, you're going to
mm,
fail. I mean, you're
So
only benefiting yourself giving everything you have, which you
you
don't always do for somebody else.
you're living for what you want to live for and what you believe in and what's important to you rather than what somebody else is telling you to do, right?
Mhm.
So if you have your own business, more than likely you got into that business because it's a passion of yours or because it's something that you like. It's most people, I think that businessmen, and I say men, that applies to multiple genders and sexes, but they're creating businesses that will make money based on the metrics of that. But I think that people like us who make stuff with our hands or are builders or small business owners or like your wife's business, they start a business because it's a passion of theirs.
Mhm.
And I think that the everything that motivates you within business a lot of times to a fault is that passion and kind of feeding and fulfilling yourself, which doesn't necessarily make the most lucrative business, which I'm
Yeah.
sure all of us can kind of attest to.
Well, one of the sayings or quotes that people say all the time is like, find something that you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life. That is such bullshit. Like,
Hold on,
absolute
Jason.
crap.
We Mike Connolly from Greenside was on the episode that will air right before this one, and verbatim said that.
Yeah, it's stupid. You find something you love to do and you're gonna kill yourself for it. I mean,
Right.
you're gonna work harder than you've ever worked in your life because that's the thing you love to do. So I feel like people have this false narrative about like working for yourself that it's this posh thing and like, oh, I'm my own boss. I can set my own hours. I can do what I want. I'm never gonna work. I work ridiculous hours. And granted, I do like what I do, but I mean, you're gonna work
Eh,
a lot harder to protect it.
But it's also, I mean, this is the second time I'm bringing up this book, Happiness. Tyler, do you remember the name of that book I
No,
mentioned?
I don't remember the name of the
All
book
right.
from a year ago.
No, I mentioned it.
It was last week,
Oh
actually.
yeah, the happiness advantage, and it talks about like that he asks a group of people to define happiness, and and people all like give their narrative about it, and the reality is it's there is no real clear definition. It's really up to that person to define what happiness is to them.
Yeah.
um and kind of what you just said about like you'll never work a day in your life, and saying that's bullshit. It's like, well, it depends, right? Like your viewpoint is that I do work and I'll kill myself for it, and I put a tremendous amount of time and effort into it, and that's your take on it. Where Mike, when he said that, he's probably like, no, I put a tremendous amount of work into it, and I work ridiculous hours, and I would kill myself for it, but I don't define that as work. I define that as me chasing my passion, and I
Yeah,
and
yeah.
this makes me happy. And you guys are saying the exact same thing, but just almost like having more focus on one,
Well,
like the time that's invested versus where what you just said. Like people think it's gonna be posh, and you're not gonna have to. You can work whenever you want. It's like I do work whenever I want.
yeah.
It just happens to be all the
Well,
time.
and some people are just built like where they can't not work. Where it drives my wife crazy, but I'm not. I mean, you talk about what is happiness and when are you happy? Some people, happiness is like, I just want to be able to sit on a beach and drink a Mai Tai and stare at the ocean. And me and my wife have tried to take those vacations before, and she would love that. That would be happiness to my wife, is just
Mhm,
relaxing and doing nothing. And I
mhm.
remember one vacation specifically, we rented an Airbnb, and in her mind, she was looking forward to just laying around and doing nothing the entire, weekend that we had. And I was there for 30 minutes and I was like, I can't do this. I can't sit around and do nothing. I'm not happy. So I actually ended up going into the garage at this Airbnb and finding their lawnmower. I mowed the lawn at the Airbnb. And then I noticed one of their sprinklers was broken. So I dug it up. I went to the hardware store. I got replacement sprinkler parts. I fixed their sprinkler. And she was really mad. We got in a fight about it. Like, why
Mhm.
can't you just relax? Why can't you just, have some time off? Because that's not what makes me happy. I like doing stuff. I like working. And I mean, it just depends. Like you said, your definition of what is happiness to you.
It's so funny. We have a little cabin up in New Hampshire, and it's the same thing. It's designed to go there and do nothing. And we went up there one summer, and it's a 2-hour drive. We get the kids. The kids are playing in the backyard. My wife's like, finally, I can just chill. And same thing. I got up and I went and bought an axe and decided to start hand splitting firewood. She's like, "What are you doing?"
I'm having a ball. That's what I'm
Yeah,
doing.
Right.
just and just like to expand on that story, I end up videoing it and sending it to Him. I don't know how, I forget why we were talking about like splitting wood, and he was giving me pointers like, all right, swing the axe this way. All right, now do this. And it was just like, and she's like, you're a psychopath. I'm like, I'm just chill. I'm just splitting some wood and we're gonna have some firewood. She was like, that's relaxing to you. I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Probably because you don't have to think about anything else. What, Jason, what does your wife feel, being that she's college educated with an art background?
Well, let's be honest. We all know art backgrounds are bullshit. I mean,
I
an
mean,
art degree is like, talk about useless degrees. An art degree is like the number one.
so that's the type of thing where it's like you invested so much time and money into getting an art
Yeah,
degree.
well, she dropped out
Um,
of art school, to be fair. She got 2
okay.
years into art school, and she had a professor, and she went to class, and the professor posed the question to the class. He said, "Can anybody tell me, what do you get when you graduate art school?" And a bunch of people raised their hands, and there was all different answers like, "Oh, you get a degree, blah, blah, blah," all these things. And he said, "No, the only thing you get when you graduate art school is a portfolio. You get a body of work that you can show to, people." And my wife was like, "I'm paying $30,000 a year for this swanky art school to get a portfolio when I graduated." So she dropped out after 2 years, started her own art-based business, and never looked back. So
Which, I mean, it is clearly to my point, where I feel, especially in the art world, it seems like such a waste of your time and your efforts. And if what you want to be creating is art, or you want to be making that with your hands, it's almost counterintuitive to be going to school, listening to somebody telling you what to do or how to do that.
yeah, I think so. And this might sound really, really harsh. Um, but when it comes to art, if you need to go to school to become a better artist, then I just don't think you're going to be a successful artist. The most successful artists are the ones that are just born with like that raw natural talent. And I think that, I
What
mean,
a,
there's things you can learn at art school, sure, like different techniques and that sort of thing. But if a company is going to look for an artist to do like an ad campaign or something, they're not going to care where you went to school. They're going to care who presents the best quality thing for what they're looking for.
so what do you actually feel is going to make you successful as an artist, or what makes your wife or yourself successful in that realm?
I mean, you just gotta, it's like anything else. You got to be willing to put the work in, and you got to be willing to be told no a lot, and just keep putting your stuff out there in front of people over and over and over again. And eventually, hopefully, somebody will say yes. Or again, it's going to sound harsh. You're not going to make it and realize this isn't my thing.
Yeah. I was reading an interview online with you guys, and it was from quite a bit of time ago. But it said that you guys were firm in believing that you should create something that you love and you're passionate about, in so many words, rather than what's going to sell.
Hmm.
Meaning that if you want to create a product or you want to create art, that you should think about yourself rather than the end user. And it reminded me, I was listening to a podcast with Rick Rubin lately, and he said that so many artists, their mind is blown when he tells them, like, forget about the audience. The audience doesn't matter. They come after you. You must serve yourself
Hmm.
first. And you think, as like a commercial artist, that you're writing and creating music that's going to sell. And he's like, that's not the answer. That's not how to be successful as a musician. Like, you must serve yourself first. And it kind of got me thinking, and aligned with what you and your wife said, that if you are going to be an artist, whether you're educated or not educated, or you want to bring something to market, you should be thinking about how this serves yourself and what's important to you and being passionate about it more so than like what's marketable, what's
Yeah.
actually going to sell.
No, I 100% agree. And I think that I mean, I get asked a lot about YouTube. And I look at YouTube and I'm like, man, sometimes I'm like, this was a fluke. I must have just got in at the right time or whatever. I know nothing about YouTube. My channel exploded and here I am today, almost 1 million subscribers. But honestly, I think the thing that served me the most in that was exactly what you're saying. I never got on there and tried to chase the viral trend or just put out a video that I thought people wanted to see because it would, get a lot of views or engagement. I just started building what I wanted to build and what I was excited about. And especially when you're doing video, that translate into the video. I mean, people can see your excitement, so they get excited about it. And people can see when you're being disingenuous in things, and they can see when you're being fake about things, and people don't like that. And so, sure, some of my videos aren't the most popular, but I don't really care because I'm enjoying it and I'm
Yeah.
excited about it. And I don't want to do something that I hate just because I think, it's going to get a lot of views.
I mean, that's also when it turns into work, right? And it's the same at that point as you going to work at 9 to 5 for somebody else, where you start putting out content that's appeasing certain people or certain vendors or certain partners, and now it's an obligation for you rather than something that you want to be doing. Where, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd probably far more enjoyable for you to set up a camera and just build what you want to build than build something because a vendor told you this is
Hmm.
what we need and these are the constraints and it has to look this way and it has to be formatted like this. At that point, it's like I'm making money, but I'm just going through the motions.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's been a few times since I started doing YouTube where I've agreed to do like product specific videos or like I've gotten a sponsor and they really wanted to dictate what project I was doing. And I went along with it because the money, frankly, was really, really good. And every single one of those videos, like if I was to pick out videos that I regret doing, it's always those ones where
Yeah.
I gave in to just taking the money and doing what somebody else told me to do. Cause I look at it and I'm like, this is embarrassing. It's so stupid. It's nothing I
Mhm.
would ever actually do. And I just kind of like hate myself for it afterwards. I feel cheap.
It's
And
like
I'm
short-term wealth.
yeah, and that's not how I wanna feel all the time. I'd rather make a little bit less money, but genuinely be excited about, like I mean, my favorite videos right now are when I just am laying in bed and I have some crazy idea, woodworking related, and I wonder, like, "Is this possible? Would this work? Is this an idea that could actually happen?" And then the video is just that, me experimenting and trying to figure it out. I mean, that's the
So
most fun.
let's talk about that specifically a little bit because I think one of the more viral ones that I know you from is the tank
Mhm.
on your lawnmower. So that one was just some crazy idea you had?
So that was mostly I gotta give the credit to my, at the time, 5-year-old son who, ever since he was a little kid, I've always had him sit on my lap when I mowed the lawn, and we have one of those 0 degree, lawnmowers, and he was the one that was like, "Dad, this turns just like a tank," the way it's,
Mm.
driven, and I was like, "It does." And then I started thinking like, "I wonder if I could make this thing into a tank," and that happened to be right when, COVID happened and
Mhm.
everybody went into lockdown and I couldn't really go into client homes to do client builds. And I mean, I just can't sit still. I can't do it. So instead of not doing anything, I turned the lawnmower into a tank.
I remember seeing it unfold. I'm like, this is ridiculous, but it's
I think
like
somebody sent me that
I
at
couldn't
some
stop
point.
watching. I was like, this is like he's got me, and like, and that was I was curious at where it all stemmed from, and I don't know if you actually talked about that in the video or not, but so at that point, that was strictly just out of, but that was just strictly based out of like, hey, this is something I want to do. I'm going to film, and then YouTube will pay me ad revenue based on the
Well, I
video,
mean,
the
at that
success.
point, when I did that video, I maybe had 10,000 subscribers, if that. I
Oh,
mean,
interesting.
that was maybe like my fourth video I put up. I probably didn't even have that many subscribers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that was at like the infancy of it. And it started out being like, oh, my son suggested this. It would be fun. And my original idea was just to slap some plywood on there. It would look like a tank
Mhm.
and make him happy. But as I got into it, it just kind of snowballed, and I kept trying to make it
Sure.
like cooler and cooler. And then I was like, how can I make the tracks actually, function, and how can I make it shoot? And yeah.
So up until YouTube, you like all of your revenue or income was based on custom furniture
Hmm.
and client.
Yep. Yep.
And how has that shifted?
Um, yeah, so it was all client work. Um, I got most of that client work. I started working with a number of interior designers and worked closely with them. Got a lot of client work through them, which is, if you're doing custom furniture, I highly recommend working with interior designers because it's nice because you don't have to work directly with clients, which is the biggest pain in, in doing any kind of custom stuff.
Yeah.
In what sense, though? Like, I feel like we all know that, but for you, what
Oh,
was the
just the
most
back and
difficult?
forth of like getting clients to make decisions on design and blah blah blah.
Mm,
But if you work with interior designers, they do all of that back and forth to the client before they ever come to you. So they come to you, they know exactly what they want, they give it to you, and you just go, which is really nice.
yep.
Um, but yeah, I was doing custom furniture, and then I had no plans to do YouTube at all. I was doing, you know, pretty regular content on Instagram, more just for my own fun, up until that point, and then COVID hit, and everything got locked down, and like I said, I couldn't sit around and do nothing, so instead of just not building, I kept building. I just started doing videos on it and posting on YouTube, so I really haven't been on YouTube very long. I mean, it was the beginning of lockdown that I started.
Nick, who'd we have on the podcast that knows him? Um, he's also on YouTube. He makes furniture. I feel like he's in North Jersey.
Oh, Keith Johnson?
Oh, Keith Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that he's the one who first introduced us to you. Now that we're having I feel like I'm putting all of these things together right now because I didn't realize the tank was you.
Yeah. Yeah, Keith's a
And
great guy. He's one of my favorite humans on the planet. He's the nicest, most genuine, sincere person I know.
yeah,
Mm,
I think that I think I'm recalling speaking about you in our conversation with him, but I did not realize that that was you until right now.
that's
But
fine.
I'm pretty sure that that's the case. Um, so I would imagine as being what you're doing now, and this is your full time role, that the hardest. I know that anyone asks us if it's podcast related or just generating ideas in that like creative process, but what's that look like for you as far as like just coming up with YouTube content?
Yeah, I mean, people always ask, like, are you ever worried you're going to run out of things to build? And not really. I mean, I'm always having weird ideas. We have such a long list of things I would like to do or explore. Um, for the first year, I mean, even continuing now, I'd say most of my videos were thought of by my wife because she's like, oh, if you're going to be just doing builds for content, you might as well finish everything on our house that I've been asking you to do for 5 years and you haven't had time to do. So it's actually been really nice because, yeah, I can do videos and get paid by YouTube to work on my own house. But our house is pretty much done at this point, and so then it's expanded out. Like, I've spent 6 or 7 videos this last year building a treeless treehouse for my son and doing a whole bunch of other stuff. I got a Airstream that I bought off of Craigslist this last year that we're going to start, redoing the whole inside of that. I mean, there's always stuff to do. I'm not too
Yeah.
worried about it.
And for
Yeah, I guess the biggest hiccup would be generating those ideas. I think that for most people would be where they'd hit a wall and start overthinking things and what do I need to put out? But I guess if that's coming from within and your wife's helping with that, I think that probably is going to produce the most authentic content for you guys as well.
Well, yeah, and I mean, once you start putting content out on YouTube and you get, a good number of subscribers, and we have a really loyal Patreon following too, they're really helpful, honestly, because they'll suggest things like, hey, it'd be super cool if you did this kind of video, or I'd
Hmm.
love to see you build this. And a lot of those suggestions are really solid. So that helps too.
Do you have anyone working for you?
Yeah, I got one full-time employee, Craig, and he makes my life super easy because I'm really bad with like the analytical side of things and
Yeah.
responding to emails and doing all that stuff, but he's really good at that. So
So he's doing like all the back end
He's
stuff.
doing all the back end stuff, which is really nice.
That's the best because then you can just do what you want to do
Yeah,
and what you
exactly.
enjoy doing.
Yep.
So
Where
he's
it's
not
like,
helping you on any of the. Did you spill your drink?
No, I was playing with a pocket knife and I just dropped
Oh.
it.
I was gonna say
I don't know
that
what
would be terrible.
I feel like dropping the pocket knife is more terrible than dropping a drink, depending on where it
I
landed.
know I'm a fidgeter.
And depending how much liquid is in that
No,
cup.
the
Yeah,
drink is still there.
Does Craig work with you on the projects, or is he strictly content?
No, I mean, he's such a good employee in the way that he's willing to kind of do anything I ask him to do. So when we were doing the treehouse, I mean, he was out there in the trenches with me, framing walls and writing emails, in his spare time. Or, I mean, he'll do anything. He's also got a background. He was a professional photographer for a number of years, so he's kind of got an eye for that. So if I need him to jump on the camera and film stuff, he can do that too. So he's great.
So how does he get paid? Like, is he hourly? Is he splitting do you guys have some sort of metric in place that, if he's doing the back end of YouTube to make it successful, like how's someone like him work where he's doing everything?
I just pay him a salary. So
Yeah.
he works Monday through Friday and he gets X amount a year. And I try
What was
and
the tipping point for you to hire somebody?
Oh, I think it's when I had a month or so in a row where I kept finding these emails in my inbox of companies who genuinely were trying very hard to give me money. And
Yeah.
I just wasn't seeing or responding to their emails. And I realized I'm literally losing a lot of easy money here that could be made if I just had the time to follow up with these people. And I just didn't have the time to do it. And then my our Patreon was making some money, but I was like, man, if I had somebody to put some effort into this, I feel like it could be
Mhm.
generating some good money. So in the first year that I hired Craig, our Patreon was already paying his salary just in the effort he was
Yeah.
putting in on there. So I mean, yeah, he's been worth his weight in gold for sure.
And how long had it been that you were running this side of the business prior to hiring him?
Only like a year and a half, probably. That was, I mean,
Yeah, that's not
doing
bad.
YouTube, yeah. But
It's
YouTube also,
it
it just grew so much quicker. Like I didn't even intend for YouTube to be a thing, and then it happened, and then it grew so quick. I was kind of just thrown in the deep end of the pool, not knowing what to do.
I mean, if you think about it, it actually the way that everything I know I was reading that you kind of your business changed directions with COVID and everything else and going down this path, but you were somewhat lucky to have not necessarily had like another full-time job that was pulling you away from this because Nick and I have had the podcast now for 5 years and I know the feeling that you have of leaving money on the table where it's like
Hmm.
you have sponsors getting a hold of you who want to partner with you but you don't have people in place or time enough to pull away to line those things up or to set them up or to create what they want you to. And it wasn't until we either pulled away and made the time, but we had to pull away from other jobs or made enough money to be able to hire people to handle that, that you can actually make money.
Yeah.
It's so screwed up that like you have all these opportunities landing on your plate, but if you don't have the time or the money to put people like you're only one person and you have
Hmm.
another job, like the fact that you all of this happened and you didn't have another full-time job to kind of pull you away from this and it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna put all my eggs in this basket," like it worked out well and a year and a half of leaving a few opportunities on the table to me sounds like a bargain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. I mean, looking at it now, Craig's been working for me for over a year at this point. He worked all of last year, and then last year he was part-time, and he just went full-time this year. But looking at it, I'm like, if Craig quits, I'm gonna quit too. I'm done. Like, there's just no way at this point. I'm like, there's no way I could do it without somebody else.
Do you think you'll need more people or is that the goal?
Um, I think we're pretty good right now. We got such a good system down. We're hitting a lot of the main areas, but we are also keeping it like fairly simple where we're not overcomplicating things. a lot of people that, I mean, I have a lot of friends in YouTube and content creation that I consider like mentors that have been doing it a lot longer than I have. And they've suggested things like, oh, you could hire a professional video editor so you wouldn't have to edit your own videos, because I still edit all my videos.
Hmm.
And I could see maybe eventually, maybe, doing something like that. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of the personality in my videos comes from the way that I edit them. And that'd be a really hard thing for me to let go.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see.
It is. Do you have any vision or goals for yourself with the brand to get to a certain point, or like, I would really like to be here? Or are you just kind of like rolling with it and seeing where it takes you?
We're just kind of rolling. I do have thoughts like, I mean, basically since I started YouTube, I've pretty much put out a video a week for the last 2+ years. Uh, and I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot of freaking work to put out a video a
Yeah.
week, especially when my
Yeah.
videos are mainly project based, which means I have to build an entire project, edit a video, voice it over, and release it all in the span of 5 days, basically.
Hmm.
Um, I would like to get to a point where we've grown the channel that I could slim down the number of videos but increase the quality. So
Yeah.
instead of doing a bunch of shorter projects, I could focus on some really longer projects and put out less videos. So I could see it transitioning to that point, but other than that, I
What
just don't think
what
that
would
far
have to
ahead.
happen to what would happen to have to get there, me being like slightly ignorant as to how the whole YouTube system and all of that works. But
I
like,
would just have
what
to
would have to
make the
change?
decision to do it.
Yeah.
It goes back to my just I just hate not having enough to do, and so I'm like right now the main way we make money is through sponsored spots in a video. And
Yeah.
so if I can put out 4 videos in a month versus 2 videos in a month, obviously I can make more money. But I feel like if I took the time and increased the quality of my videos, I could probably get more per sponsorship. So even,
Yeah.
2 videos, I could potentially be making more money than I am on 4 videos. But right now, I'm just in this place where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to grind it out. We'll get 4 videos out a month. It's guaranteed money. I don't want to take the risk to try and change things up. But just a mental
It's just
thing.
it is, it's tough because you get so deep in the trenches that you don't have enough time. And that's the same thing like I was just saying that Nick and I ran into, where it's so tight as is that the thought of scaling back or making a change and implementing that change, it's like I don't even have time
Yeah,
to
it's
put
it's
any thought to
even though
that.
it might be less work, it's almost like it's easier just to keep doing more work because at least you know what you're doing
Yeah.
than to change anything and have to figure something else out.
But guaranteed, if you were to make that change and free yourself up some, one, it would probably be easier and more lucrative, like you said. But two, you'd sure as hell find other ways to spend your time.
Yeah.
Um, but it is really hard to make a change, especially when you don't feel like you have time. But I would definitely, I mean, if there's an ability for you, and I'm not one to talk, but to be able to put people in place or systems in place to be able to put out a higher quality of content and possibly not as much of a time suck on your end, it's like speeding down to slow up. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it took us 5 years to be able to do anything like that. And you look at it now and it's like, I wish we would have done this 3 years ago, but you just can't. Like, you
Yeah.
almost can't pull away from it.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
It's
It's
so
funny, like
hard.
even from the YouTube thing is just so interesting, and I mean, we've been like this slow grind growth forever. It's never really like peaked, and or not or like spiked. And when we were the only time we've ever seen a spike is when we decided to go ham on YouTube Shorts, and it was like boom, like we were seeing growth, and it was driving up, and then we ran out of shorts, and
Mm.
we were back to like our weekly video.
Back to
And
wearing pants.
yeah, exactly. And here we are. It's even there was points in time where we were releasing 3 long format videos a week, and it was great. But it's like I look at Doug, and Doug's still sitting in the other room. He's cranking out trying to get a video out today, and it's just this constant film edit. And and the podcast is the same way. It's like Doug does all the podcast editing, And it's like we talk about wanting to do more, and especially recently, and I actually sent Doug an email like with a brain dump the other day, exactly what you just said, Jason. It's like, how do we get to a point where rather than having to fulfill this weekly quota, that we can create this desire for people to wait longer for better quality content. And I think it's like Mr. Beast, right? Like I'm sure you know who he is if you don't know
Hmm.
his like whole spiel, but I've listened to him talk a handful of times. I think they do one video a month.
Yeah.
And granted, they're like, I don't even know how many hundreds of millions of subscribers across the channels and whatnot, but the point being is that he the quality of content is so good that people will wait,
Yeah, for sure.
because he's built that rapport, and rather than just trying to feed the funnel, and like the Gary V model, right, where Gary V, it's content all day every day, and it's all valuable, but you can never consume it.
Yeah.
It's complete overload.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've definitely gotten to a really sweet spot with the channel where we have a very loyal subscriber base, which is really nice. I look at some
Yeah.
other channels in our space, and I mean, they'll put out like a video with 20,000 views and a video with 20,000 views and another video with 20,000 views. And then every once in a while, they'll get a spike and it'll be like 500,000 to a million. And it's almost like that's what they're doing. They're searching for those like viral views.
Mm-hmm.
Where I just don't feel like we're doing that. It goes back to me saying, like, we're just kind of doing what we want to do and what we enjoy doing, but our subscribers are really loyal. So we're almost guaranteed now when I put out a video, it's going to get at least 200 to 300,000 views, which is a
Mm.
really nice place to be in because, our subscribers almost like consume our content like a TV show and they look forward to each episode every week. And I think that's another reason why it's hard to change things up, because I know that they're like, I don't want to like degrade my subscribers, but I almost have them trained on what to expect. And
Mm-hmm.
they know like every Saturday morning they're going to open up their phone and there's going to be a new Bourbon Moth video, and they're just so used to it. So it's just hard to change those habits and change the way you do things. And you wonder like, am I going to look back and be like, dang, I wish I never switched things up. It's always that like, what if? So it's just
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to change.
Yeah, it depends on what your audience is looking for as well. If like there's value in that higher quality production for them or reinvesting, it's hard to tell. I guess it depends on how kind of in tune you are with your following and your base of followers as to what they want to see. Because I think at the end of the day, like that's what's important, because that's what the people who are investing in you and the partners that you have, like if you have the loyal following and you're guaranteeing them that exposure week in and week out, I think that's more important to them than other if you have the highest quality production.
Well, I know, and I often wonder, like, I put myself in the subscriber's position, and I'm like, would I rather see one project? Because I do a lot of multiple part series, like the Treehouse. I made like
Mm-hmm.
6 videos out of it, right? Would I rather see a little bit of a project, but be able to watch it every week in a 30-minute episode, or see the entire project, but only be able to watch it once a month? And I don't know. That's a hard question because part of me
It
is
is.
like, maybe I'd like to watch it every week.
It's difficult, but the other thing, it's like it almost doesn't matter. Like what you think
Yeah.
doesn't
No, for sure.
necessarily
I
matter.
completely agree.
But how do you tap into that follower, right? Where like you're trying to land the highest percentage and make the most amount of people happy and content and grow your market. And like, what's the answer for that? Because you go by logical thinking or what you think is right. And like, maybe that only speaks to 2% of your followers.
Hmm.
Not, I
It's,
mean, and going back to something you said earlier, Tyler, it's like, well, forget the audience, and
yeah.
do what's right for you, and just follow, like, when you find yourself trying to feed a machine rather than just produce a video that you think is cool, you start veering off path.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think if you're
Well,
putting out the kind of the dopest content that you can and the stuff that you are most proud of,
Mm.
and it's like, hey, I'm doing the best that I can do, and that like I'm super proud of what we're putting out right now, and you kind of cast aside, I need to hit this volume with this many day, and like if you're just doing shit that you're super proud of, I feel that would speak to your followers more than anything.
Yeah. And I mean, at
It's
the end of
tough
the
though.
day, whatever you do, I mean, that's what it is. People just have
Yeah.
to deal with it. I mean, and they'll get used to it and move on. And I feel like that's the big hang up is you think too much about what do people want, like are they going to enjoy this? But it doesn't matter. People will just
Yeah.
adapt. You do it, and that's what it is. Come what may.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many there's so many things that come into play there, even when you're releasing what's going on in the world, what's pulling people's attention away from your videos. There's so many things that you can't control, that you have to focus on what's
Yeah.
within your control
Well,
and
and
what you
I've
can put
learned
out.
I've learned in the last 2+ years of doing this that you can plan all you want and you can think you've got YouTube figured out and you can think like, "Oh, I got a great idea for a video and it's going to go viral." And you put it out and it's like crickets. Nobody
Flop.
gives a shit. But
Y-
then I can have like a week where I'm like, "Dang, I have the sponsor lined up. I really need a video. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to throw something together. This is a horrible video. Everyone's going to hate it and it's the best video you've ever done in your life and everyone
Yeah.
watches it." And that's when I
It's
just throw my hands up and I'm like, I don't even know anymore. Like,
Complicates
I've
things.
put Doug in that position more time, like so many times, where it's like he produces this high quality video, I post it, it does well, and then I go on a job site and I film a guy doing something for 22 seconds, and I post it, and the thing gets 10,000
yeah.
likes, it gets viewed like a half a million times on Instagram, and he's like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, like one of our best videos in the last 6 months was a week that we didn't know what we were going to do. And I had this on my board for a long time because we always have like backup video ideas just in case we need something. And it was like a how to buy wood. And I thought like that is the lamest idea for a video ever. Like how to buy wood. No one's going to care. It's going to be so boring. I'm not actually building anything. Well, sure enough, a week rolled around. I had some personal stuff going on. We needed a quick video. We filmed this thing in one day and threw it up there, and sure enough, it's already got, like, almost 1,000,000 views, and
Is that the one with the Home Depot?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It was such, like, a last minute, thrown together thing on our end, but people
yeah.
loved it, and that's where
Yeah.
it's like, maybe we're trying too hard here, I don't know.
I have a little off topic question that I wanted to dig into more due to my own ignorance than anything else. But I've seen you post a lot about your family and your son, and he's adopted, and you guys
Wait,
being involved with
why
it.
do you assume he's adopted?
I mean, you said that he was
Oh,
adopted.
okay.
Um, um, but there were a few other points that correlated to that. But just being ignorant to that process and not being involved with that and seeing how strongly you were involved with that, and it said, that you guys are supporting or had supported charities for people who are going through that whole process. Just if maybe you could speak a little bit to what that was like and kind of what that looked like, and more due to my ignorance of not knowing anything about it than anything else.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, my wife and I actually we got married super young. I was 19 and my wife was 20 when we got married. It was one of those things where we were dating and we just kind of knew that we found our people and we wanted to spend the rest of our lives together. So we got married young, which meant that we didn't really try and have kids for a long time after we got married. We were in no rush whatsoever.
Mhm.
And it never even occurred to us that, like, when we decided to have kids, that there would be any issues. You just assume, like, when you're ready to have kids, you have kids. Like,
Yeah.
there's no problem. So it wasn't until, I think like 7 or 8 years after we got married that we started trying to have kids. And it just wasn't happening. We tried for like over a year and a half and there's just nothing. And then finally, a year and a half later, she got pregnant. We were super excited. And she ended up having a miscarriage. And I mean, it was hard and we were really sad, but we knew this kind of thing happens. And we just figured, we'll try again and it'll stick next time. Long story short, we ended up over the course of about 2 years going through 4 miscarriages, like one
Oh my
after the other
gosh.
after the other. It was pretty heartbreaking time. And then finally we decided, this just seems ridiculous. We're just
Yeah.
repeating the same thing over and over again. Obviously, something's going on. So we made the decision to just abandon that whole thing and adopt, which looking back, I wish we had decided sooner to
Yeah.
save, my wife some heartache. And also, it's just been such an awesome experience. So we originally started going through an adoption agency internationally, and we were going to adopt from the Congo. We were in that program for about a year and a half. We were just to the point we got all of our paperwork done. We were just to the point where they were starting to like try and match us with a child. And the Congo completely shut down their adoption program to the US due to a bunch of governmental stuff. Basically, the US government changed some trade agreements with the Congo. And so to kind of punish the US government, they were like, well, we're not going to adopt babies anymore to you, which seems pretty lame. So that whole thing got shut down. We had
Wow.
to switch gears to a domestic agency. And so we signed up for a domestic agency and we were signed up for maybe 3 months. We had nothing in place to have a child. We didn't have like
Hmm.
a nursery. We didn't have baby clothes or anything. We got a call on a Friday, like late afternoon, evening, that there was a mom that had like picked us as parents. You basically send out these books that they can look through with like pictures of you and who you are. So we got a call on a Friday evening, and they're like, "Oh, and FYI, she's in the hospital. Like she's going to give birth now." And so,
Strap in.
so we jumped on an airplane, flew down to Georgia where he was born. We flew out Saturday morning. Our flights were terrible. We ended up not even getting there till Sunday, like morning, super early, and then he was born a few hours later. So we just made it there in time. Happened to be at the hospital when he was born, and yeah. Then all of a sudden we're at the hospital and they hand you this baby and they're like, "All right, see ya." And we were like, Wait, you trust us with this human?
Brand new
We
baby.
don't know anything." We had to run to Target in Georgia and buy a car seat. I installed it wrong. And I had him in there completely wrong. And in Georgia, the law is that the birth mom, once she gives up the baby, she has 10 days to change her mind. So you legally can't leave the state for 10 days. So we were down there, we had him, but we couldn't leave. And so that 10 days was insanely long because every day
Yeah.
you're just wondering, like, are we going to get a phone call that we have to bring him back? And you're like falling in love with this child. And you're like, man,
Right.
really hope we don't get that phone call, which we didn't, thankfully. So we brought him home, and 7 years later, he's just the best. Absolutely
That
love him. So
that's crazy. I like have the shivers right now listening to that. When you guys made the decision to kind of give up what you were trying and adopt, was that a difficult decision to make, or was that um kind of like a sigh of relief at that point? Because I know my wife and I didn't have trouble conceiving, but like when we first decided to have children, it probably took 6 months, and like in hindsight, she got pregnant on a month that we just were like, screw it, like
yeah.
let's not be so regimented. And I like feel is the tension and the stress and being so deliberate, like really perpetuated her not getting pregnant, and like
Hmm.
it was stressful between us for those and like it wasn't fun. And like I can imagine a year and a half, 2 years, that like conceding to that, and it would almost be like peaceful.
Yeah. Well, so we had 4 miscarriages total, and only 3 of them were planned. So we were actively trying when she got pregnant the first 3 times. The fourth one is, I think, what really made the decision for us because we had already kind of stopped trying at that point,
Hmm.
and then she accidentally got pregnant. Uh, and then she had a miscarriage, and that's what made it really unfun because it was like
Yeah. You
I
didn't
don't know.
sign up for this.
Yeah, like, we didn't sign up for this, and we had this hope like, "Oh, well, this is an accident, maybe this will be the time," and so I actually ended up getting a vasectomy after that because we were like, "We don't even wanna, like, accidentally get pregnant. I mean, there's no reason to do this to ourselves." So we were pretty at peace at that point with
Mm.
the idea of just adopting, and honestly, it made no difference to us at all, and we learned so much through the adoption process, like, it's really sad at the time, the agency we went through, when you have to fill out all the paperwork, they're like, "Do you want a white baby or do you want, like, a mixed race or, a non-white baby," basically, and the if you didn't want a white baby, it was $10,000 cheaper than if you wanted a white
What?
baby. Because according to statistics and everything, this is horrible, and it just makes me
Yeah.
so sad.
I feel like that just made my stomach upset.
Well, yeah, that a non-white baby is considered less desirable, and so they are government subsidized for a cheaper rate, um, at the time.
I
It's not
fucking
that way
hate that.
anymore, thankfully.
Like,
Yeah, it was terrible, and so we were like, "We don't care, of course, like, we don't need a like,
Yeah.
whatever." Um, but also, like, another big hurdle is just the cost. Adoption is so stinking
Yeah.
expensive, and I feel like a lot more people would adopt if the price barrier wasn't so huge. And so one thing that we're actively working on right now is we're trying to figure out some way of setting up some sort of foundation that will raise money and, provide funds for people that do want to adopt to help lessen that burden, and so we've already started doing that, and it's kind of like when we hear about certain people that are adopting, we're doing it that way, but we'd like to get something more permanent in place and an actual foundation in place that helps people that want to adopt and lower that burden. So that's
ca
really definitely close to our hearts.
can you allude to, like, what the rough cost for adopting a child is?
Kind of depends on what kind of adoption you do and what agency you go through, but it's going to be anywhere from 30,000 on the low end to like 60 to 80,000 on the higher end. Like ours was almost 60 grand when it was all said and done, which
Yeah.
And
is
is this to, like, cover medical fees and all of that stuff, or, like, the I
um
guess the logistics and legalities of this, or, like, where's that going
yeah, I mean
towards?
the easy answer is a yes. I mean to all of it. It's going to anything from like and I mean, I get a lot of the fees. A lot of them make sense in the way that before you can be eligible to adopt, whatever state you're in is gonna require that you have what's, called a home study. So a state worker comes to your house and makes sure that you're not like a crazy person and that you have a
Yeah.
fit home, so they're not just giving out babies to anyone. So they have to pay all those fees to have the workers come and do that. A lot of it's legal fees, both in the state you're adopting from and the state that you're in to get like birth certificates and everything transferred over. Some of the cost I really appreciate. And I mean, a big chunk of the cost was providing for the birth mother for
Mhm.
months after she gives birth for living expenses and getting her back on her feet, which I think is really important. So I'm not saying
Mm,
that the cost is unjustified. I understand a lot of it. It's just unfortunate that it's there and
yeah.
there's a lot of people that just can't afford to do it.
I mean, if you think about how much money we spend as a country towards shit that's not important, and then you have kids and mothers who are could potentially have an opportunity to have a much better life
Mhm.
because of many reasons. It's like, why is there not more money and funding and education being put towards this
Yeah.
rather than other things? It's just it's such a shame, and I know a few people who have gone through with this, and I just have never had the conversation with them, whether it's me being uncomfortable or being face to face, and I could pony up being virtually asking you this question. But I also thought that it was somewhat fitting seeing, how much love you exude for your son, um, and how important that is, and kind of to advocate and show people like how important this is. It's I admire it so much, and I'm so happy for people who are doing this and who are able to kind of fulfill their lives and do help people out, help families out, help mothers out who don't feel like they're fit to have a
Hmm.
child, and like giving them a new lease on life. It's so important.
Yeah. Well, and that's like another thing that just educated me through the entire process was, I mean, we were very fortunate in that we got to be in the room when my son was born and we got to spend time with his birth mom.
Mm.
And just realizing, I mean, this girl that was making the decision to give up her child was barely 19 years old,
Yeah.
young girl. She was working at a Taco Bell, and she was the sole source of income for herself, her daughter that she already had, her mother, and 3 other people living in her one-bedroom apartment. She was the only income for the entire family,
Yeah.
and she got pregnant and very responsibly made the decision that there is just no way that I can responsibly bring another life into this situation. And
Hmm.
meeting her and realizing that she is, without a doubt, the bravest person I have ever met in my life. And understanding that you can give up a child and still be one of the kindest, bravest people ever because you're doing it out of a place of love. I mean, it's just, I feel like adoption gets this stigma attached to it that, like, oh, these people that are giving up their kids, but it's not about that. It's about making like a smart, wise decision and then having people that are willing and able to come in and, provide for those children. And that's where I would really like to set something up where there's not this disconnect of cost, where it would be
Yeah.
easier for people to take on that sort of thing. So
Do you guys keep in touch with the mom?
Um, we don't. So we had what was called a semi-open adoption. I mean, there's open
Yeah.
adoption and closed adoption. Open being that you're in contact with the birth mother, closed being no contact. And we were supposed to have what's called a semi-open adoption, and
Yeah.
that meant that we still do every year on his birthday. We basically send a packet of information down to the adoption agency. Whether or not she gets that, I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't have her contact information, so she could be getting all those updates. It just depends on whether or not she wants to be. And honestly, like, I go back and forth on, like, part of me is like, of course she would want to, but at the same time, like, she's a
It's gotta be
19-year-old
so
girl, and that
hard
would be
too.
so hard. And I have no ill will or disrespect if she just wants to have a life?
Mm.
I mean, I like, my wife gave birth to 2 of our kids, and I didn't give birth to them, but the thought of handing over a baby for that child to have the best life possible, the selflessness that that would take and how difficult that would be, like, I don't know if I'd want to see an update on that child or have a
Mhm.
relationship, because that would be so hard. I
Oh,
can't
yeah, for
imagine.
sure.
And like you said, most of the time people think, "Oh yeah, this mother, their family's giving up their kid because they're selfish and they don't want the added cost of a child." And like that's not the case. The case is that they understand they are not fit to raise this child, and this
Mhm.
child will have a better life
Well, that's what we
elsewhere.
try and tell our son. I mean, our son's, he's 7. He asks questions. He knows very well that he was adopted. I mean, obviously, he's black. We're white. We couldn't hide it from him forever.
Yeah,
But we always try and explain to him that it's not that you were unwanted or that your birth mom gave you up. It's that she loved you so insanely much that she
Mm.
made this decision, that she wanted you to have the best life. And that's really what I want him to understand the whole thing because it's 100% true. I mean, absolutely.
is he going to college?
I don't know. We'll see if he wants to be a doctor or a lawyer. No.
No, man, that's so cool. I just wanted to pick your brain on that a little bit. And obviously, I mean, I'm sure you have a very expanded reach with what you can do, but if there's anything that we can help out as you guys kind of navigate that path, let us know and we'll put our feelers out as
Appreciate it,
much as
man.
possible. Because I think what we do and kind of what a lot of us are known for, I think at the end of the day isn't necessarily what's the most important thing in life. And whether I like your YouTube channel or not, you know, the opportunity that you guys have given a mother and a child. And I'm sure that you've been, you know, blessed with many things in that relationship, but that's more incredible to me than your follower count or what you put out in videos and, you
Absolutely.
know, the that you show for that little boy. I don't know. It's admirable and it's great to see. And anything that we can do to help
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
for
Genuinely.
sure.
It's cool to see him in the videos too, and like get excited, just like being part of the process.
Yeah, he likes being in the videos, and he always asks, he's like, "Dad, who do you think has more fans, you or me?" I'm like, "Definitely you, for sure." So
It's
we
amazing.
just we just filmed a pilot episode for the Magnolia Network, and he plays a
Oh,
big
I heard
part
about that.
in that episode, and it's really fun to see him in there. So
Congrats on that. So what's the I did not watch the video like you announcing it, but what's the deal with Magnolia?
oh, they reached out and they wanted to film a pilot. I don't know how any of this works. They filmed the pilot. The pilot's done. It's aired on Magnolia. So now we're kind of waiting back to see like if people liked it. I guess we'll do a whole series. If not, then that's the end of that. So
And what's the story?
it's very similar to my YouTube channel. I think. I mean, it's going to be very much like me showing you how to do different things. So the first pilot episode, we built the office that I'm actually in right now, kind
Mhm.
of as like a it's like an office slash like a space observatory space. So it's tall and it's got this front deck with telescopes and stuff. But kind of in the premise of the episode is I'm kind of building like a place to work, but a place that my son can also like hang out and be with me while I work. So I wanted to be fun and, interactive. So it was
That's
fun.
cool.
Yeah. If nothing else,
What
it's
a
been a cool experience.
When they came to you, what was your initial reaction to that? Were you like, "Yeah, we're good to go," or is there setting up boundaries or protecting what you already have in place?
Yeah, no, there was definitely a little bit of that, making sure that I mean, obviously, we've got a pretty good thing going with YouTube, and I wanted to make sure that, that wasn't compromised at all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So there was some back and forth with contract stuff just to make sure that YouTube was completely separate and they had no say over that, but we got that all figured out. So yeah, it was it's one of those things where it was a fun experience. I don't know if today's like modern age TV is what it used to be when
Yeah.
you can kind of produce your own stuff and put it on YouTube. I just don't think
Mhm.
it's as big of a deal as it once was. But it was fun to see how it was done and whether anything will come of it. I have no clue. We're still waiting to hear. So I'm the last person to know anything, apparently.
Your
Yeah,
son your son will know first.
Exactly.
that's tough. I think that myself, if I were in your shoes and it's like somebody's coming to me because they want a piece of the pie, my guard would go up and be like, what are you trying to do here?"
Yeah.
Um,
I think
that's
there's
tough. And then
always that side of it when, people jump in, especially from TV. I think you're right, Jason. Like TV is just not what it was before.
Yeah. I mean, like 15 years ago, I feel like if somebody offered you a TV show, it'd be a huge deal.
You'd stop life.
But now,
And
like it seems like everyone's got a TV show. There's so many streaming platforms. There's so many more shows out there. It's just
Mhm.
very saturated. Yeah, it's different.
it's also when you have your own brand, a successful brand, and a successful personality, and you've cast yourself in a very specific light that works for you. Now you're putting yourself out there with an expectation of somebody to cast you in an equally, important or accurate light, and it's like, I don't know,
Yeah, well, that
it's
was the
tough.
hardest part, honestly, about filming the whole show was, uh, like, I'm so used to working for myself and I can do whatever I want. And I know how I want things done and I just go do it. But then you have like a film crew and they're kind of like directing you and telling you what to do. And apparently I just don't take direction very well. Because like there'd be times where for the pilot episode, we built this walnut table and I cut all the pieces up for the table and they filmed the whole process. Like got them all finished and they're like, all right, that was great. We're going to reset the cameras and then we want you to cut them all again. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're already cut. I can't cut them again. Like it's done. We can't redo
Yeah.
this. And they're like, well, we're just gonna fake it. Nobody will know. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is how you do things. I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tell them
and
they
that's the
need
part
more.
I
They
don't
need more
like.
cameras. They need
Yeah.
more cameras.
It's funny that, Tyler, what you just said though, it's like that's what TV was for, is to create a brand, right? Where it's like they could create a brand around Bourbon Moth, for example, and you get this show and you blow it up, and then for like Chip and Joanna or Studio McGee, it's like they built this brand, they got this TV show. Next thing you know, then they have like the Target thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then they continue to elevate the brand. Where when we were talking earlier, especially around YouTube and like your website, there's like 1,000 things I can buy on your website,
Mm-hmm.
and you have all of this branded stuff where and it's all I'm just gonna call it like relabeled things, like a labeled pencil or like a T-shirt or a hat and things like that. But you know I I think Tyler asked the question earlier, like, what's the goal with YouTube, and what are you going, like, what will you capitalize on that? Where I'm thinking that, well, do you come out with your own whiskey,
Mm.
or like in that, and that you don't need a TV show to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And
You
I mean,
you've built such
without
a
like letting the
rapport.
cat out of the bag too much, we're already like working on that sort of thing. We haven't done the whiskey yet. That's a good idea. I'll write that one down. But we are working with, I mean, as a woodworker, being in the trade, you're constantly doing things and realizing that there's holes. Like
Hmm.
there's tools that don't exist that would
Yeah.
be very helpful if they did exist. And the nice thing about being in our position is that like we have the ability to develop and manufacture those tools. So
Yep.
we are working with a bunch of manufacturers. We have some tools coming out probably in the next year here
That's
that I
cool.
think are going to be really sweet, but we can do that on our own. We don't need a TV show for that.
Yeah. Do you
And
know
that
what's in?
and that's what I'm getting at, is like, this is where the TV, yeah, it might help grow the brand, but you're already growing.
Yeah.
It's So I follow dirt bike and off road racing, and it's insane that like what's happening within all of these industries, right? That 10 years ago to be like a privateer and not be with a factory team was like a lower level, because you had to go out and source all your own sponsors. You're responsible for bike maintenance and parts and all of that stuff, and you're looking to put a team together to support you to go race. And now, like, you were working to get to a factory deal where that brand, that was your sponsor, they paid for everything, you were on a salary, and now you have all these guys and girls who are going from factory teams back to being a privateer, so that they can control their brand and they can actually make more
Mhm.
money
Yeah.
not being tied to a factory contract, where it's like, for the first time, they're realizing they don't need these factory teams. They can compete and they can make more money and create their own brand on their own. So now, like, the top tier racers are all privateers again
Yeah.
and not with factory teams. It's insane.
Well, the hardest part in starting any business, like if you have a product to sell, the most difficult thing is showing that product to potential customers who want to buy it. That's the number one hardest thing. And I feel like what a lot of YouTubers are realizing is like, I've already done the hardest thing. I have the
Yeah.
audience. I have the customer base right here. All I have to do now is come up with the thing.
Right.
And it doesn't even have to be that amazing of a thing. Like the fact that it's your thing, they're going to be into it and they're going to want
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something there. And you have the support and you have the network, and I think that it's already all there, and that's why you have people coming to you.
yeah.
And to kind of keep that in mind, where if people are knocking down your door, you're obviously doing something right, so don't change too much.
Well, it was funny because I did like this. I always try and like inject some humor and stuff into most of my videos. And every year around Christmas, I like to do like a Christmas gift guide on like tools that I've really liked throughout the year that people, might want to buy as Christmas presents. I always throw some like fake, stupid ones in there. And one of the ones we did this year was a coaster in a bag, which is basically just a bag of sawdust that you can pour out on a table and set a drink on. And as a joke, we offered them on our website, and it was one coaster in a bag for $12.99, or you could get two for $28, which doesn't even make any sense. It's the worst
Right.
deal for two. So we put these on our website as a joke, and it was amazing how many people bought like a set of two for $28. And I'm like, wow,
They didn't get it.
we
Wait,
Yeah.
so,
can
so like,
we
how
can
many
sell.
people? Like 100?
Oh yeah, I mean it wasn't like a crazy amount, but enough that I'm like, 100, 200
Did you
people
end
are
up
buying
selling
them.
them?
Oh yeah, we
Like, did you?
sold them. We'd go over to my dust
That's
collector and
sick.
fill up these little bags with sawdust and ship them out. I mean,
All right. So all right.
We should give some away on the podcast.
there you go. I'll send you guys some.
I'm not paying you $28 for it. I just need a bag. I'll get my own sawdust.
Yeah.
All right. So all right. I was on your site earlier, and I was going to ask a couple questions about it. So like for instance, like the signed photo. How many have you sold of those?
Oh, a lot of those. Yeah, that's
Oh,
probably one
shit.
of our best sellers.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not
That's
like
insulting.
it's
Nick is
it's
just insulting the
no,
hell out of me
it's
right
just
now.
funny like what people like I think of signed photos, right? Like that was huge when we were kids. I don't know
Yeah.
anyone that has like posters on their bedroom walls anymore or signed photos of anything.
No, I
Well, yeah,
know. I
because
don't
you're
either. And a
30
lot of that
something.
stuff was
Because I'm
like
34
suggestions
years
by
old and I
other
don't hang
people.
out with.
Like you should offer this. And I'm like, no, that's stupid. But then we do, and I'm like, well, okay, I
Yeah.
guess people
All
want it.
right.
I'm always blown away. I'm not that interesting of a person, not that amazing. My signature is never going to be worth anything, but it's
But
flattering
it's
that people
amazing.
want to buy
No,
it,
but
I
it's
guess.
I think that's amazing. All right, and the other one is the palette.
Oh
Did you
yeah.
sell one?
Um, well, it depends who you talk to. Uh,
I'll take that as a yes. I mean, it's hilarious. Like I know you have a thing against the river tables.
yeah, so there's a
Because
video with that palette where somebody tears it apart and builds something else out of it, and it's over on Paul Jackman's page. So if
okay,
you really search for it, you can find it, but it's that's why it's sold out because he already got it and ripped it apart.
got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Speaking of pictures, Nick, so when I first met my wife, which was in college, um, I guess I went to IBS with one of my construction classes, and my wife, I don't know, as we were like courting each other, and she found out I was a carpenter, and she was like, "Oh, I took all sorts of wood shop in high school." Was telling me how she knew like Norm Abram from this old house, and when I was at IBS, Norm was there, and he had photos of himself that he would sign, and I got one like to Rachel from Norm kind of a joke, but like totally to hit on my wife when we had first met, and I'm pretty sure she still has it.
Oh, nice.
how did this not come up when we interviewed him?
I don't know. I feel like it was in person. I was probably too uncomfortable to bring it up.
We
I don't
I got
get my sense of humor either.
we
Maybe
got to
he
get him
would.
back on the podcast.
Maybe
And
I'm discounting his
that's hilarious.
comedy level.
It's amazing.
That's good.
Jason, I appreciate you being on, man. Your conversation about school, about your career in woodworking, and of course adoption and your son and just everything. I second what Tyler said. It's admirable, and this conversation was really cool and appreciated.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, I think I connected a few dots as far as
Do you know who he
people that
is
I
now?
know
Yeah,
and
you remember who I am. Who are we having on the podcast?
who you
today?
are.
Oh, yeah.
I also found a picture of you without a beard, which you are unrecognizable. So I
There's
don't
a
think you
couple.
could ever lose your beard.
So when I was in college, my sister was graduating college, and as like a gift to her, I didn't have any money at the time, so I was like, "What can I give her?" I made this music video of me
Oh
singing
my God.
Miley Cyrus's "There's Always Gonna Be Another Mountain." And it's a full-length music video, and I put it on YouTube so I could send it to her. A few months ago, somebody found this video and like posted it everywhere, and it's like me without a beard. I still had like a full head of hair, which I don't now. Anyways, that's floating around there somewhere too.
That's sick. Yeah,
I hope you're
people,
monetizing on that one.
I should be. It's probably
It'll
got
be-
more views now.
people shave, and it's like, oh yeah, it's the same person. They shaved. Like you don't look the same at all.
Mm.
Like it's a different person.
And my wife's
I think
always like, "You should shave your beard." I feel like a 12-year-old when I shave my beard.
it's just a different look.
Yeah.
Completely, it's not woodworker
Face
look.
is cold. I can't like
Yeah.
save my leftovers when I'm eating. It's just a whole thing.
It's true.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just real quick as we wrap up this podcast, wanted to thank you guys for being such great listeners through years and years of the podcast. You guys have, if you haven't seen it, we've rebranded the podcast entirely on Instagram. The new handle is at Modern Craftsman Pod, POD. Slash has done an amazing job with rebranding. Our website's going to be live any day now We're super excited about it. We have a ton of merch for you guys. And just really just wanted to get on here and thank you for the continued support. And if you'd like to continue to support us beyond just listening, would love if you could hop onto iTunes, leave us a review, let us know how we're doing, like and share this, and make sure you're promoting it on Instagram so we can like and share that back. Again, just huge thank you for being such a huge support to us.
I'm cracking up because you guys are such good listeners. I feel like that's something I would say to my kids, or I wish I could say to
I
my
was gonna
kids.
say I wish I could say
I don't
that
think
to
I've
my
ever
kids.
said that to my kids, maybe in my dreams. But I also want to thank everyone, partners, sponsors, our guests, our listeners. It's been a long road, a long journey. We've recently put some people in place. Doug's working his butt off, Catherine, Ariana, and I feel as though we're hitting our stride. And we have a lot going on, but I'm very excited for the future. Everyone has been so supportive of the changes within the podcast, of the new branding. I can't get over how much I love it and how many people are reaching out to me saying how much they love it. So, as always, if you have 2 seconds, the biggest thing for us, if you can leave a review for us, it keeps us kind of relevant within that podcast search. It helps us, it helps our partners, and it allows us to be able to do what we do on a weekly basis. So if you're looking for ways to thank us, or Nick's birthday's coming up, you want to get him a birthday present, leave a review, right?
Happy birthday to me.
All right, guys, thank you.